birthday?
May 31st, 1921. My father was born in Ireland.
Okay.
Came to this country in 1905 or 4.
Right.
Went to Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, where he met my mother. I lived in Canada for about a year, then we moved down to Detroit. So I grew up in Detroit.
Yep.
And
So you grew up in Detroit? You went to school in Detroit?
grade school, high school, 2 years at the University of Detroit before going into service.
So were you a Detroit Tigers fan?
I am.
Tell me, who was your hero growing up?
Billy Rogel. You remember that name?
I do. He was a shortstop,
Yes,
wasn't he?
you're right.
Remember the Detroit Tigers winning the World Series as far back as 1934.
I do. But I was 13.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So your heroes would have been guys like
Well,
Greenberg and...
Yeah, Gehringer, Owen.
Greg, my mother, when she was on her deathbed in hospice, she could remember the starting lineup of the Tigers when she was 11 years old.
Well,
It was amazing. She
Yeah.
said she could name them all, the starting lineup.
it's a beautiful thing.
It is a beautiful thing, yeah.
Do you remember December 7th, 1941?
Certainly.
December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
What do you remember about that?
I was sitting on a couch in my living room at about 2 in the afternoon, 2 or 3, and I was studying. And I was listening to a radio at the same time, and I heard it then.
What was your reaction? You would have been 20 years old at the time,
Yeah,
out of high school.
yeah.
Did you feel like this could affect your life?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew I wanted to fly.
Now, talk about flying. Did you used to go to the airports? How did you get an interest in that?
Well, Henry Ford had an airport for the tri-motors that he had, if you remember that. And on Sunday afternoon, my parents would drive out to the city airport of Detroit on the Far East Side to watch a DC-3 coming from New York, going out to the west. Yeah, I was impressed by that.
When do you remember your first flight? Did you when you jumped in a plane and went?
The first plane I saw,
Well, the first
You flew in.
You flew in.
flew in.
the first plane I flew in was when I was in the service. I was in Pittsburgh at Duquesne University for 3 months. And as part of that indoctrination, we had a ride for 10 hours. A ride only in a Cub.
So that got your adrenaline flowing.
Yeah, it did. He knew that I would be going into service, my dad. My mother, I don't recall her reaction at all.
Were you the, as far as children in the family, were you the oldest?
I'm the only one.
Only one, okay. Did you get drafted or did you enlist?
No, I enlisted.
Enlisted?
Yeah.
Now you had choices of what service to go into. Why did you choose the Army Air Force?
Well, I had to wait for 2 years before I could take the Army Air Corps exam for flight training.
Okay.
Because in the beginning they required 2 years. They didn't at the end of the war because they were losing so many pilots. They'd take an 18-year-old kid. If he could take the pass the exam and the physical, they'd take him.
So initially, you had to have 2 years of college.
Okay.
June of 42.
So June of 42, and where did you go to boot camp?
On a very cold January day in 1943, my dad took me to, there's a fort that's been there since the Indian Wars in Detroit, and there's a troop train leaving there going somewhere. I know where. It was a very cold, snowy day.
Okay.
Got on that train. We stopped in Columbus to pick up some Ohio State students. Kept on going south. When the train stopped, I was in Miami Beach. Sunshine, palm trees, leaving snow and cold behind. God, I thought I'd gone to heaven.
So this was your boot camp in Miami Beach?
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
So you're in
And-
Miami. Oh, wow, I was right.
And there was a motel right on the beach. A new motel. The Army took over, I have to say it this way, they moved all the Jews out of South Miami Beach. Moved them out, rebuilt it for students like myself, for basic training.
How long were you in basic training?
8 weeks, and then the Duquesne.
And at Duquesne, is that when you began your flight school there?
No, they parked us there because they didn't have room or facilities to train all the people that they were bringing into service. So they put a lot of us in schools all over the country until they could find pilots to train, instructors, build all the facilities. Took a long time.
But you knew you wanted to be a pilot.
I did.
Yeah.
After 3 months there, I went to Nashville, which was a classification center. They classified you as a pilot, a navigator, or a bombardier, depending upon your agility, dexterity, brains. And I was classified as a pilot. From there, I went to Arcadia, Florida, right near that big lake there. What's the?
Okeechobee?
Yeah. There were alligators on the runway. That's where I really learned how to fly.
That's when you had to. That's when you really got tested. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a speed bump. So you're there at Okeechobee, or near Lake Okeechobee, and then where'd you go?
Bainbridge, Georgia, for it was called Basic at Bainbridge, a bigger airplane, night flying, instrument flying, and when I was finished there, they determined whether I would be a twin-engine pilot or a single engine, and I wanted to be a twin, so they sent me to Valdosta, Florida, which is in the southeast corner of Georgia. I said Florida, Georgia. That base is still open. It's a major base, Valdosta, Georgia. Because I did very well there to learn how to fly a B-26. I went out to Dodge City, Kansas, Boot Hill,
Yeah.
the end of the Chisholm Trail, and it was still a little bit of the 1870s there, even then.
Really?
Yeah,
Did you ever go visit there? Did you ever go visit Boot Hill and
I did.
did you? What'd you think of that?
Well, Boot Hill is a cemetery.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Got a lot of history there.
yes,
Training you as a B-26 twin-engine pilot, and the goal is to get you in the action.
yes.
Yeah. So when did that occur? When did you finally get the orders that you were going across the pond?
Well, before that, I had to meet my crew.
Ah, okay, sure.
5 more.
Okay.
And a pilot, a co-pilot rather, a bombardier navigator, a radio man, and an engineer, and a tail gunner. After meeting my crew, we went down to Lake Charles, to Louisiana, where I trained them in night flying, bombing runs, navigation, and at the end of that 6-week period, we all got on a troop train and went to Savannah, Georgia. Because I was going to fly an airplane to Europe via the south South American, African route, we all had to have jungle shots, which we got in Lake Charles.
Did you get sick?
I got very sick.
He had a defective yellow fever shot.
Okay. Okay.
When we got to Savannah, I went right to the hospital, stayed in that hospital for 28 days. They took the airplane away. I couldn't fly to Europe the way I wanted to do it. Because from Brazil, we had a celestial navigator out to Ascension Island in the South Atlantic,
Right.
then over to Dakar, Casablanca, Marrakech, where you were.
Yeah, Morocco.
Instead, I went over on a boat
Okay.
out of New York Harbor in a convoy of probably 70 ships that goes only as fast as the slowest ship. These took forever to get to Southampton.
Did you have to do the zigzag? We were going across?
Oh, yeah, the convoy was moving all the time,
Yeah.
and there were destroyers around the circumference.
Right.
So he was not happy because he lost his plane
Yeah.
and his crew.
My God.
Oh,
So,
and it sent my crew home on a furlough and leave for 30 days while I lay in that hospital.
the team captain was out. Hey, golly.
Probably January.
Of 45.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, first we went to a replacement depot near Oxford. And replacement people are replacement people. You don't ever fly again as a crew.
Right.
You go over as a replacement. Anyhow, a C-47 took my crew and I to Paris. We stayed at the Rothschild estate.
Of course. Miami, Rothschild. Tell me how tough this is.
When he saw Saving Private Ryan, he said, that was not my experience of the war.
Wow.
They treated the Air Force guys better.
Anyhow, then the C-47 again took my crew to East France, Dijon. That ring any kind of a bell?
Yeah.
Well, we went to a base there called, it was Dole, D-O-L-E. And there I began flying. And our missions, we had to fly north first because we were against the Swiss border, who were neutral,
Right.
before we could turn into Bavaria in South Germany. And all the bombing we did at the time was in Bavaria. Railroad yards, railroad crossings, factories, ammunition dumps.
Did you bomb Nuremberg? Did you ever bomb Nuremberg?
No, near the suburb.
Okay.
Yeah, near a factory near the suburb.
Because that was devastating. Before you go on a mission, describe to your daughter and me what you would do. You'd go into a room, and was there a CO who was simply saying, "Here's what our game plan for today"?
Just like you see in the movies, a big map of Europe that they could refine down to Germany and the various areas where we were going to go board, we were going to bomb, the target, the altitude we would fly at, the degree of direction, the length of the bombing run, the approach to the bombing run. All of that was all explained.
And how many planes would be going on this run, Dad?
Well, it depended. A group had 72, 4 squadrons of 18. Sometimes just one squadron would go, some 2.
Okay.
Sometimes all 72 airplanes would go.
Really?
Yeah. When we did that, we had escorts of P-51s or P-47s. So, but I got into the war late. I saw a 109 at a distance. But by the time I get to the war, the American 51s and 47s had pretty much cleared out most of the German fighters. There was a lot of flak, more flak, because as they retreated, they were withdrawing their guns so that the concentration circle got smaller. And the anti-aircraft fire increased. And their radar system was such that they could arm that anti-aircraft at the altitude that we flew at and at the direction. And they would reload their guns every 5 seconds. So once we heard a burst, we knew that another 5 seconds, there'd be another burst. So.
How was your mental state when you're out piloting and you know you've got missions and inevitably there is the danger?
We are so highly trained, that on the bomb run, we had to close up the formation. Concentration on what we were doing was it, nothing else. Mm-hmm. No fear, because we were so concentrated on what we were doing. I mean, think about that.
Are planes going down, Dad, in your squadrons and such?
I didn't.
You didn't?
No. But other missions, they did lose.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I saw our planes damaged by a flak.
Right.
That they had to turn around and go back home.
Okay.
They couldn't continue.
Sure. You have really strategic targets. You're looking at the railways, you're looking at industrial sites. Is that how they was set up?
The lead navigator's doing all that.
Okay.
I'm watching the airplane next to me because I'm flying very close.
Right.
Because the closer you get, everybody in the following planes, when they see the lead navigator bombardier drop his bombs, then they do the same thing.
So it's a boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, they're really tagliers.
Yeah.
They're not navigators, bombardiers anymore. You have briefing right after you land.
Okay.
And with probably a big shot of whiskey. Yeah. Well, they wanted everybody to calm down, I guess. Individuals that would interview each bomb crew, what we saw.
Okay.
And what other airplanes? Well, what did they see? How much damage was done? How was the bombing pattern? Was it on the target or off to the target?
You actually had about 19 missions, didn't you?
Yeah, getting late.
Wow.
When I was in the hospital in Savannah, my mother was praying that I would stay in that hospital for the whole damn war. I was praying to get out.
So my brother and I were talking about this last week because he always feels bad that he got there late and he only flew 19 missions because he feels kind of like a lightweight. And I was saying to my brother, well, there might not be 3 people on this planet if he had gotten there on time, because they would have gotten there much earlier.
Yeah.
And it was a different war. That would have been before the Battle of the Bulge and such.
That could have happened.
So there you go.
Yeah, I don't think 19 missions is a lightweight.
He feels that, so.
There's an announcement that the war in Europe ends.
Right.
Do you remember getting that announcement?
Sure.
How was your reaction?
Well, it was anticipated because we knew the Germans were defeated, and it was just a matter of when it was going to be made public.
Were you doing bombing runs right up until that time, Dad?
Yeah, the day before I took 2 2,000-pound bombs from Dole to the west of France to the submarine pens at Saint-Nazaire and Lorient. Wow. And we were just getting ready to drop our bombs when the announcement that came to the airplane not to drop the bombs. So I brought the bombs back to Dole. There was 20 feet of concrete on top of those pens. So our 2,000-pound bombs didn't do anything.
So the war ends. Did you celebrate? Did you have any sense of anything on the base commemorating that?
Yeah, I think my co-pilot and I each got a bottle of wine. I know we got drunk.
Sure, you can do that.
At the end of the war, we moved into Germany. That's now the 320th Bomb Group, part of the 12th Air Force. We were there about a month when the 12th Air Force went home. The 320th Bomb Group went home. I didn't have enough missions to go home. So I stayed in Germany for a year after that. A wonderful year.
You became part of the Courier Service.
Yes.
I've never heard the term. What did that really mean?
The courier does not exist. There's no terminology for a courier in the Army. None. They created those things for a few pilots like myself. They said, at the end of the war, a lot of people were going home. The Army has a thing called a TO&E, Table of Organization and Equipment. Organization refers to personnel. Equipment is what equipment is. They no longer cared about equipment. But the Army is so damn fussy that they say that an officer always has to be in charge. So they told me I would be moving around Germany to a lot of different places. I was a fire chief, for example, because the fire chief had a group went home. So they said an officer has to be in charge. Now the NCOs and the enlisted guys knew how to run a fire department. But I was in charge of the fire department as a first lieutenant. One of the first jobs I had was at Passau. It's on the Danube in eastern Germany. I was sent there as a Northern Norseman. The Canadian Mounted Police flew a single-engine Northern Norseman. You remember seeing?
I remember seeing it, sure.
Yeah. Anyhow, that was at a grass strip, and I was an adjutant to the commanding officer there, and I was there for about. I flew him up to places where he had to go for meetings. So
you got to see a lot of Europe.
I did. I saw a lot of Germany. Because I'm just using this as one example, but I went to many different places as a replacement officer.
I know you had an opportunity when the war was winding down to go to Dachau, the Dachau concentration camp. Why did you go there, and what was your reaction?
I didn't go inside.
Right.
I stayed outside. We were at Herzogenaurach.
Why did you go, Dad?
To see it. And this was probably 4 or 5 days after. The general in the 7th Army made everyone in that small town walk single file through Dachau to see what was there. I didn't go inside. We didn't go inside.
So you kind of knew what happened there. You walk up to the outside and there's, the barbed wire but did you have any, could you smell anything? Could you?
Yes, the smell was still there.
Did you know what happened there at that time, Dad? Were you cognizant of what had gone on?
I knew then, yeah.
You did know then?
Then, but not before.
So what was your reaction? Emotionally?
Well, like I said earlier, this was a Christian nation. Presumably civilized. But these people that did this were uncivilized. What they could do, collecting all the Jews in France, putting them in boxcars and shipping them off. Barbarians did that.
Dad, that wasn't really well known at this time, right?
Huh?
This is 5 days after they liberated Dachau. That wasn't really well known, the extent of it, was it?
No, but that news spread around the world very quickly.
Okay.
Because they killed millions of Jews.
Right.
We could see the cubicles where they stacked the Jewish people, where they were living. Like in maybe 4 high, people in bunks, 4 high, 5 high. See those?
Were there a lot of people that were going to look at this, Dad?
Oh, yeah.
There were.
Well, they were all soldiers.
American soldiers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The first job that the 320th Bomb Group had was to search the area on the surface, looking for ammunition stored in private places. The first thing we found was a warehouse full of silk for parachutes. Well, the Army collected all that stuff. But there was always a German car of some kind available that we could drive within limits. I wanted to see the country, which I did.
Yeah.
So
Did you interact at all with the German people
later on,
later on?
yeah. When I was at Firth,
Firth. Well, okay. Why were you in Firth? Did you get stationed in Firth?
as part of my courier, a senior officer came to another pilot and myself. He said, "You're going to be a courier pilot. You'll never see me again, but you will get instructions from me." And I don't know how they did the instructions, but I think it was by teletype. Anyhow, my instructions came from him, and he told me that I would be stationed at Nuremberg. And that turned out to be late summer of '45 until I went home in June of '46.
Where was the airport in Nuremberg?
The airport was Firth.
Firth?
They came. The people that I took in the airplane came to Firth.
Okay. Where was it located? I know where Firth is, and I know where Nuremberg is, but was it
It would have been on the southwest to southwest to west side of Nuremberg.
Okay.
Well, it had been a major German base.
Okay. Where did you stay? Where were you billeted?
Well, in German barracks.
Okay.
They were still there. Yeah.
Okay. So that's where you and did you have a crew or were you by yourself?
No, I was pretty much by myself.
Okay. So when there was
Now, I had to be, as a first lieutenant, I had to report to somebody there.
Yeah.
So I was always subject to what the CO asked me to do if I didn't have to do something else as a courier pilot.
Where would you get your directions? How would you get them? From the CO saying, please take such and such someplace?
See, that's why I say I never saw my director again. He said he would get to me one way or the other.
How would he do that?
I think by teletype. Somebody at the trial, and in the case that I remember, there was a captain associated with your organization.
Right.
He contacted me and said, you are to visit, or you are going to fly X number of people to London, Paris, Brussels, wherever they want to go.
Yeah. There are a lot of prosecutors, they would just go on holidays, Christmas, elsewhere. So I suspect they would put in an order saying, we would like to go to Paris or Brussels. And then that person, his name's Jack, I'll come to me, would then somehow contact you.
Yes.
And then would they then come out to the airport, meet you at the airport?
Yes.
And then jump on the plane?
We put him into Bombay.
Bombay, yep.
Were you flying a B-26 at that time?
Yeah,
Then?
yes.
Okay.
So
And they would just sit in the Bombay, just.
Well, you have to get in the Bombay, then you back away from the Bombay opening, and you close the doors. You can sit on the doors.
Okay.
Not very comfortable. There's a way of getting there.
If you had to go to Brussels, would you just stay at Brussels until they came back? Would you bring them back, or would you?
No, I'd stay. I'd go and visit Brussels on my own. But I agreed to meet them Monday morning at 10 o'clock And they'd be there, we'd go back to Nuremberg.
And as a result of that, did you have any chance to talk to them at all about what their jobs were or anything that was going on?
I had no contact with anyone with the exception of Charles Collingwood.
Right.
He's the only one.
Tell me about that.
Well, I flew he and others to London. I didn't know who he was. He was just a reporter. And he was so grateful that I had done that, he somehow got me a ticket to the trial. And I never maintained contact with him. But later on I learned who he was. I didn't know at the time.
You are there at the trial, and you walk into the courtroom for the very first time, and your eyes are, and you see the dock where the trial, where the defendants are, and there's a Hermann Goering or a Rudolf Hess or Keitel. These are people you read about, and you saw their pictures in the paper, but now they're there. You see them.
Well, I sat with the press, and the press was a stadium seating.
Right.
So I was up here looking down at them, up here looking down at them, and I immediately recognized Hess and Gorman. God, I was impressed. I was impressed because I was aware that I was watching and listening to history. And I looked at those people and I wondered, how could they possibly, all those brilliant people, the generals, the admirals, they had an Annapolis and a West Point. How could they buy into that philosophy and twisted logic that Hitler had? How could they possibly do that? Plus, it was a Christian nation.
Right.
I had a lot of doubts.
Did you get a sense that you were part of history? You were watching history?
Yes, I was. It was happening.
Went back another day, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
The trial was being prosecuted both times when I was there.
Okay.
And I watched the reaction of the prisoners sitting there, and they just sat there and listened.
Right.
They knew they were going to be hung, so they really didn't care.
Was it in English at the time, or did you have to use your headsets? Do you remember what language they were using the day you were there?
One day it was in English. The next time I went back, I wore the headphones.
Yeah. So you stayed in Nuremberg area first until June of '46,
Yes.
and then how did you get orders? Did you have enough points at that time to go home?
No, my courier job ended. And I was involved as a first lieutenant. We were scrapping airplanes. We weren't going to bring all those P-51s and 47s home, so we turned them into scrap piles. And that's where I met a German officer pilot who had been he had had some education in the States, or out in Fort College, but he spoke English. So through him, we hired a number of German people to do the actual scrapping, the chewing up of the airplanes, and he gave them the directions of what to do.
Got it.
And that was at first.
So there's a big scrap pile of military planes at Firth someplace, probably still.
No, I think they melted all that stuff.
46, you are now got enough points and you can come home.
Yeah.
Where did you go to when you came home? Did you remember how were you?
I think we departed on a ship out of Le Havre
Right.
to New York. Stayed at the Roosevelt Hotel. There were 3 other guys that I played baseball with in the spring
Yeah.
of '46, and we stayed at the Roosevelt. God, I recall we had a steak dinner type of thing.
That
They
was
were,
the other thing he did as a courier pilot. He flew around the Army baseball team.
I got on a train the next day and went to Fort McCoy, Wisconsin,
Yeah.
where I was separated from the service.
So you finally get home. You get home to Detroit, and your mom and dad are there. What was their reaction when they finally see their son?
Well, I recall walking from the train in the Michigan Central Station in Detroit, down a long corridor. I saw my mom and dad at the end of the corridor. My mother was crying. Yeah, I'm glad to get home.
Yeah.
Glad to see my girlfriend, her mother.
Gotcha. Had you been dating her all along? Have you been corresponding with her?
I met her in high school at the 10th grade, but 3 of my other good friends also met her. She was a very good dancer. They dated her. Well, you couldn't date because nobody had any money, depression. But we'd go to a show or have, there were dances in our gymnasium that didn't cost any money.
So
Yeah.
you danced her away. And
Well, not really. When I came back, I went back to the University of Detroit and I wanted to finish my education, and I joined a fraternity, and we had a fraternity dance, and I called Lynn, and I hadn't seen her in quite a while. And then after that, I worked at Sears Roebuck, she worked at Sears Roebuck, Thursday night, Friday night, and Saturday. And after work, we'd go to a show. So I got to know her better and better.
Their relationship really bloomed through letter writing during the war. So they had been friends in high school, and they wrote to each other during the war.
I was 26, she was 25 when we got married.
and the thing you had in common, you were both Detroit Tiger fans. That's what the beautiful thing.
Yeah.
You were back in the States in October of 1946. That's when the judgment at Nuremberg occurred, and that's when they announced the convictions against the people you saw there. Do you remember having any reaction at all about what was the news?
Yeah, because Hess, I wondered why Hess was really there, because I didn't think that his move from Germany into England, parachuting, I didn't know whether he was there as a truly representative of the government of Germany to try to arrange a peace type of thing. And I didn't think he had done anything like these guys had done. So, and I was not surprised when they didn't hang him. He spent a lot of years in Spandau. I got a message to meet with a German and an American. The German was an executive of the railway system, and the American was part of the transportation system. And they said, we want you to take a troop train from Nuremberg to the cigarette camps so the troops could get home.
Yeah.
So they gave me an armband and 2 MPs who were also going home. And we had about 9 cars, 2 baggage cars, 6 cars of troops, and the center car in the middle was all officers. Everybody drunk.
Sure.
So we left Nuremberg, and we couldn't go very far because of what we had done before in bombing their radio yards. So when the train would stop, and I was advised ahead of time what to expect, the guys in the center car, all the colonels, and they wanted to see me. So I and my MPs would go to the center car, and the colonels would all holler, "Hey, flyboy, get your ass off the train and find out why it stopped." So me and the MPs, we get off at night because the train was stopped. With a lantern, we'd walk to a half-destroyed station with a potbelly stove and two guys. They spoke a little bit of English. We spoke none, of course. We spoke no German. And when I want to know why we stopped, the two guys in the train station they'd point my wings and say, "Hey, you're partly responsible for what happened."
You had to deal with the aftermath.
Great story. I love
So when I get back on the train, I had to go back and tell them what I'd heard.
it. You guys ordered me here.
And then they called me flyboy.
Oh my God.
At the end of the trip, a colonel came to me and said, "Hey, Lieutenant, we apologized. We had a lot of fun at your expense. but we're sorry we did it."
Now, did you use any of the access to the cigarettes and the liquor for black market? Did you get involved in any of the trading of stuff with the locals?
Yes, I did. I got a camera from a German that I got to know. Well, he was one of the employees that we had. So he spoke a little bit of English, and he represents some German families. He was a trader. So I gave him a carton of cigarettes. I got a very good camera.
That was the barter system. I don't know.
Yeah. I was stationed in Erlangen with a doctor who was alcoholic, and I was sleeping in the same room he was. And this doctor, I had been told they got to get enough evidence on him to get him out, because he was drinking medical alcohol. It's 100 proof, and he would have DTs. He would go almost insane. So he did that one time. He got to the point where I got enough evidence, so I called the MPs, and they came and took him away. That same doctor I saw later on in Boston. His name was Maloney.
No kidding, wow.
On a business trip to Boston. I had maintained contact. I liked him.
Yeah.
I liked him, but he was a dead drunk.
Jesus.
He later was better.
Fellow Irishman.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had a political job in Boston.
Of course.
Maloney.
I love it. I'm just honored. This is really a thrill for me. I just personally to salute you. I've interviewed probably 300 World War II vets, and I don't know if anybody is sharp and have such recall in all my World War II interviews than you, Jack.
You know, this is a interesting generation. So I had the honor of escorting my dad on one of those honor flights back in 2013.
Yes.
And so it was his birthday, and I think it was his 93rd birthday, 94th, I don't remember. We went out of Kalamazoo. And do you know about the honor flights?
Oh, yeah.
So there were still, you know, guys left. He met another B-26 bomber pilot on that flight who became a very good friend of his. And I remember talking to a gentleman who had been a tank commander in the Ardennes, you know. But anyhow, all day long it was people clapping and, you know, thanking him and all these groups of people. And we get back to Kalamazoo and they had this reception at the Kalamazoo Stadium. But they got them on buses and now the whole stadium's full and people are clapping. And my dad looked at me and said, I don't know why they are going to this much trouble. He said, I don't know what the big deal is. He said, you know, they trained us, we went over, we did our job, end of story. And it was just this classic World War II generation. And we came back and we lived our lives. He could not understand why people were making such a big deal out of it. The same thing with this. He doesn't understand why people are making such a big deal out of it.
Well, I turned down interviews before because, like you said, we were highly trained to do our job, period. I don't know what the term hero, I hate it. I don't like it. I don't deserve it.
You deserve a salute, though, that's for sure.
So it's just a very different generation in terms of, because he hates the term hero, you know, it's like, no, we did what they asked us to do and, you know, thank God we came home. But it's just a very interesting look at that generational attitude.
We sort of ended in 1946, that's a long time ago. What did you do after that? What kind of, give me a brief bio of the rest of... You got married?
Yes. Had 3 children, Pat, Tom, and Lori.
Yeah.
Moved around a lot. I was involved mostly, I got a degree in international marketing,
Okay.
but I didn't use that I didn't use that training until the last 24 years of my work life. I worked until I was 72 for a Swiss pharmaceutical chemical company on the chemical side of the business. I was a sales manager. I've been in all the states, most of the provinces of Canada, went to Switzerland on business a number of times.
Yeah.
Britain. So the Pallises, remember the Pallises? Yeah, I had a great career. I worked until I was 72. I liked the job and the job liked me. So.
Basic, and you lived in Detroit most of your life?
I lived in Detroit, Omaha, Louisville. She was born in Louisville. Detroit, Chicago, Lansing.
He lived in Lansing for the last 40 years, would you say?
Yeah.
35, 40 years?
Yeah.
And so that's where he moved from last year.
Okay.
He was living in Lansing.
So you became a Spartan fan at Michigan State, I bet.
I am a Spartan basketball fan. I am a Michigan football fan.
Oh, man. Do you have one of those flags that sort of split the blue and the green?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, he's a Michigan football fan, and I went to Michigan State, so I don't understand.
She got a master's degree
Don't understand why he's a Michigan
from
fan.
Michigan State. Huh?
I don't understand why you're a Michigan fan, but you've explained it to me.
I'm a
You grew
Michigan
up with.
football fan.
Yes.
Kids in Detroit were closer to Ann Arbor than closer to East Lansing.
Right.
And at the time as a kid, Michigan had a great football team. A guy by the name of Tom Harmon.
Yes. Well, yeah, you did.
Ereshevsky. Remember that name?
I do, yeah. In history. Well, it's been a perfect year for both of you because Michigan State beat Michigan in football.
Yes, they did.
And Michigan is now number 2 in the nation.
Right.
And potentially could be national champion. So
Yeah.
everybody wins this year.
Everybody won this year, exactly. Exactly.